But there was a time when Iran and Israel not only had a good relationship, Israel viewed Iran as its closest and only ally in the Middle East. Israelis regularly traveled to and even had secondary residences in Iran. And Iranians loved the 1977 Israeli movie, Operation Thunderbolt, a movie about IDF heroism. How did Iran and Israel go from close regional allies to sworn enemies? First, a little bit of history. Iran sits between Iraq and Afghanistan and is home to 81.8 million people. For centuries, the area was known as Persia, originally called that by the Greeks as early as the 5th century BCE. The Middle East is a diverse region, populated with Arabs, Kurds, Turks, and many others. Descendants of Indo-Iranian people called Aryans, a term later appropriated by the Nazi Party, Persians are one of those distinct ethnic groups. For thousands of years, Persia was ruled by dynasties. That changed when military commander Reza Khan came to power in 1921 as prime minister via a military coup. Then, he was crowned Shah, the Persian term for king, in 1925. Reza Shah's push towards rapid modernization of the country included equalizing access to education for women and issuing strict decrees about modernizing dress. And in 1935, Reza Shah changed the country's name to Iran to reflect its people's Aryan heritage. But these changes were sudden and rubbed those who lived more traditional and religious lifestyles the wrong way. Reza's son, Mohammad Reza Shah, commonly known as the Shah, took power in 1941 and kicked the modernization of the country into overdrive in 1963. He instituted the White Revolution, a series of aggressive reforms that included giving women the right to vote, essentially abolishing feudalism, pouring money into education, and establishing programs like Social Security and welfare. As benevolent as these changes seemed, the Shah was an autocratic dictator. At his side was the Savak, an oppressive secret police who ruthlessly persecuted would-be dissidents. He also instituted censorship and was known to torture political prisoners. So, how does Israel fit into all this? Israel declared independence in 1948 and resulted in the Jews returning to their national homeland. However, many Palestinians and others sympathetic to their cause refer to this day as the Nakba, or the catastrophe. Even though the Shah had secularized much of Iran, the country was still strongly Muslim and shared the rest of the Muslim world's hatred of Israel. But the Shah was a realist who was competing against neighboring Muslim nations, and he saw strategic opportunity in the new enemy of his enemies. As early as 1950, Israel had unofficial relations with Iran and continued to establish itself as a prominent regional power with continued military victories. After the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel was desperate for an official ally in the Middle East. The Shah had grown to admire Israel's military and was investing billions into making Iran a regional military superpower. Unlike other Muslim leaders, he saw no problem with taking help from Israel. Their partnership established trade, strategic, and economic interests. Iran supplied oil, and Israel supplied weapons, as well as knowledge in business, agriculture, and infrastructure. An Israeli construction company even won a $140 million bid to build a dam in Iran. At that time, Iran had around 100,000 Jews living in the country, the bulk of them in Tehran. Israelis living in Iran had it particularly good. Some owned property, El Al flew back and forth daily from Tel Aviv, and hundreds of Iranian Jewish children attended Israeli schools in Iran. The Israeli embassy in Tehran hosted lavish receptions for local government officials, and the Shah gave Israeli businessmen treatment far surpassing the extravagance of even European royalty. In short, Israelis felt at home in Tehran. But outside Tehran was a different story. Tehran suffered from a sharp cultural divide. The north of the city was rich, educated, and modern, but in the south, the people were deeply impoverished, living in conditions that looked like a rundown slum. There was widespread opposition to the corruption of the Shah's regime. The floundering economy left thousands of college graduates unemployed and wanting social and political justice. Farmers and other workers had been displaced by technological innovation and were desperate for work, and the religious wanted a return to Islamic values. On top of all that, many Iranians perceived the push for modernization as the uprooting of Iranian ideals and culture by the US and the West. This anger exploded into protests, uniting people from across the political spectrum. Anger grew, not just towards the Shah, but anything Western, with Israel and the US as the primary targets. The Shah tried to suppress the revolts with violence, ordering the military to open fire on demonstrators, but his efforts to crack down only galvanized the revolution. Helping lead the revolution from afar was the exiled radical religious leader, known in the West as Ayatollah Khomeini. He had become an iconic figure who, through his devoted followers, incited protests and violence. Khomeini returned from exile immediately after the Shah fled. The secular revolutionaries thought when they came to power and government, Khomeini would be content to remain a religious leader. but instead, Khomeini became the supreme leader of the whole country and established the Islamic Republic of Iran. Israeli and Jewish families living in Iran felt threatened, but the Israeli government feared that pulling out would mean severing relationships, abandoning property and assets, and losing years of work establishing personal and professional networks. During the most violent days of the revolution, those who stayed behind became captives in their own home, forced to flee in secret, and often barely escaping with their lives. In the years following the Islamic Revolution, Iran severed diplomatic ties with Israel, turned the Israeli embassy over to the PLO, and instituted policies aimed at Israel's destruction. And yet, despite their religious, political, and militaristic animosities, in global politics, sometimes pragmatic strategy supersedes ideals. In the 1980s, Israel and Iran had a common enemy in Iraq. Between 1980 and 1988, Iran became locked in an enduring war with its western neighbor, all the while purchasing weapons from Israel, with Iran paying Israel as high as $500 million annually, according to some estimates. But since the war ended, Iranian leaders have resumed their call for the destruction of Israel and have unapologetically denied the Holocaust. In recent decades, Israel and Iran have become locked into what is called a proxy conflict. Iran indirectly targets Israel by supporting terrorist groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas that attack Israel. On the flip side, Israel has carried out airstrikes against the Iranian presence in Syria, assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists, and helped develop the Stuxnet virus to sabotage the Iranian nuclear program. But it is important to remember that the citizens of Israel and Iran are ordinary people. Though Israelis and many Iranian Jews had to flee Iran and still feel a tremendous loss, it's not all hatred between the former allies. In fact, there have been several instances in which the people demonstrated support for one another, such as when students refused to trample on streets paved with images of Israeli and US flags. And in 2012, a Facebook post by Roni Edry went viral and inspired similar acts of love across the world. Thanks for watching, and if there's something you want to see us discuss in an upcoming video, be sure to let us know in the comments down below.